Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. In today's classic model kit review, we'll be taking a look at Tamiya's Bristol Beaufighter Mk.VI. This is Tamiya kit number 61053. Tamiya released this kit in 1997, so it has been around for quite some time, and this kit is really representative of the Tamiya products of the mid-90s. In this review, I'll be giving a brief history of the Beaufighter. We'll also go through the kit instructions, and we'll talk about any problem areas to watch out for, as well as any modifications or upgrades that I made to this kit during the build process. We'll take a look at the detail that's found on the interior parts, and we'll also talk about the clarity and fit of the clear parts that are included with the kit. We'll discuss the fit of the major parts on the kit, and we'll also look at the exterior surface detailing, as well as the detailing on smaller parts such as the landing gear and the kit exhaust. We'll also take a look at the color and marking guides and the directions, as well as the decal options that are included in this kit. You'll definitely want to stick around for that section of the review. I'm not sure why, but this kit from Tamiya has some of the most prolific errors in the instructions and in the marking options. You really need to pay attention. So I'll go over in detail the errors that I found with this kit. Looking at the history of the Bristol Beaufighter, the Beaufighter was one of the most successful and widely used twin-engine fighter types during World War II. The first series production Beaufighter Mk.I entered service in September of 1940. With its 4 nose-mounted 20mm cannons and 6 7.7mm machine guns in the wings, this snub-nosed fighter became the most heavily armed aircraft in service with the RAF during the war. Introduction of the more powerful 1,670 horsepower Hercules 6 engines by late 1941 resulted in the Mk.VI. A 7.7mm machine gun could be added in the observer's canopy for rearward defense, and the horizontal tailplanes were modified to have a 12-degree dihedral to eliminate the unstable characteristics observed in the preceding types. The Beaufighter saw active service not only in Europe, but also in the Mediterranean, North Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific areas. More than 5,900 Beaufighters of various types were produced. Looking at the kit instructions, Step 1 has us building the control panel and rudder pedals. Decals are included for the instrument dial faces. This is the best picture that I could get of the instrument panel. And quite honestly, there's so much distortion through the windshield that you won't be able to see this part once a model is complete. In Step 2, we're building up the rest of the interior. I would highly suggest putting some seat belts on the pilot seat specifically, and I would also recommend doing that for the observer's seat. The kit comes with decal seat belts, but I've never liked the way that these look, and they don't sit realistically on the seats. I used plastic strip to make some homemade seat belts, and I think these turned out nicely, and they definitely dress up what can be seen through the cockpit canopy. You can see some of the sidewall detail in the cockpit through the kit transparencies. You can see a little bit of the interior through the observer's windscreen, but what is there is quite distorted by the thick transparencies. In Step 3, we're joining the fuselage halves around the interior. Depending on which variant you're modeling, there are some holes that potentially need to be drilled out just behind the cockpit of the aircraft. This kit also has opening hatches on the underside of the kit. To me, this is somewhat gimmicky, and I'd rather just pose them open or closed, but on this kit you can actually open or close them after you've built the kit. These parts are not really well detailed, and they don't look great in the open position. In Step 4, we're building the vertical tail, and we're installing that on the kit, as well as the tail wheel. The parts fit was very nice here. I added a scratch-built antenna base on the leading edge of the vertical tail surfaces. In Step 5, we're starting to construct the wings. We're attaching the outer lower wings to the upper wings. This is where we start to get into some of the accuracy issues with this kit in conjunction with the marking options that are included. For instance, on the color scheme that I chose, the rear-facing wingtip lights were actually painted over, and this is not called out in the instructions. Additionally, on Coastal Command Beaufighters, the wing guns were often removed, and the openings in the front of the leading edge were faired over. I think that may be the case on this particular aircraft. I wasn't 100% sure, so I left the wing gun openings open. In Step 6, we're attaching the upper wing assemblies to the lower wing center section. I thought these turned out nicely. The fit on these parts was very good, but I did spend quite a bit of time cleaning up the seams on the sides of the engine nacelles and making sure that area was smooth because the seams don't fall on natural panel lines. In step 7, we're building the main landing gear. This is a really nice assembly. It goes together well. It's strong, and the location for everything is positive, so it's very easy to get the landing gear right. Step 8 covers the assembly of the rocket projectiles if the aircraft that you're modeling has these. In step 9, we're adding the rocket assemblies as well as the main landing gear. In step 10, we're adding the landing gear doors and a couple of other detailed bits. In step 11, we're building the engine assemblies. These are not parts heavy. The fit is pretty decent on them. Here we can see the front of the engine cowlings and the detail that's on the engines. And while it doesn't look bad on the shelf, the two round air intakes on the front of the exhaust are actually recessed into the exhaust on the Coastal Command plane that I modeled. In addition, as we can see in this picture, the exhaust itself is much more porcupined. Looking at the kit parts, they have some minimal raised finning to represent that, and it just doesn't look right. There are companies that make aftermarket replacement exhaust for this kit, and if you're a real stickler for detail, I would recommend getting some of those. In step 12, we're adding the engines to the kit, and we're also adding the horizontal tailplanes, and we're joining the fuselage and lower wing assemblies. The fit on all of these parts was excellent, but here we run into a major accuracy issue with this kit, in that 2 of the marking options that are included in this kit have the flat horizontal tailplanes. They don't have the later angled up tailplanes as included in this kit. In step 13, we're adding the props and the nose and a couple of other detail bits to the aircraft. We're also adding the air intakes for the aircraft. Each of the actual aircraft that are represented in the marking options for this kit have the short air intakes. What is shown in the instructions are the longer air intakes. Thankfully, the shorter air intakes are in the kit, and I was able to use those. Step 14, we're just adding the final bits to the aircraft, the cockpit transparencies, and the radar antenna masts. I didn't have any issues with this step. And that brings us to the painting and marking guides. I really wanted to model the box art plane when I got this kit. I found a good quality picture of the actual plane. It showed a lot of the details. Some things are painfully obvious in the photograph. First off, it has the smaller air intakes. Secondly, it has the flat horizontal tails. And third, even though the instructions show this kit with the rocket projectiles, the actual aircraft only had small bomb retainers on the underside of the wings. Additionally, the color scheme that's shown in the instructions is completely incorrect. So I had to change direction on which color scheme I was going to use. Looking at the second marking option, it is for a 96 Squadron Beaufighter that was stationed in Scotland in 1943. There's a great series of photographs that show this actual aircraft. These were invaluable in the weathering and painting and detailing process for this kit. You can note in this picture that it has these short air intakes. You can also see that the wingtip lights are painted on the rear wingtip lights. As I stated before, the wing guns may have been removed from this aircraft, or they might just be taped over in this photograph. Looking at the third marking option, this is for a 600 Squadron Night Fighter. I was able to find a good picture of that aircraft. Once again, we're looking at an aircraft that has the horizontal tailplanes, and I really didn't feel like messing with these and trying to correct them. Additionally, you can see the short air intakes over the engines, and it looks like the rear wingtip lights were also painted over on this aircraft. Unlike a lot of Tamiya kits from this era, the decals themselves performed very well. For such a big aircraft, there's very few decals, and they really settled into the panel lines nicely. I had no problems with them silvering, and I think the overall effect really looks nice on the finished kit. Looking at the reference photos for this particular aircraft, it was kept in very clean overall condition, so I kept the weathering to a very subtle level. I did use pastels to highlight the panel lines, and I also added some structural detail with the pastels that is just lightly visible. And on this kit, I think it's necessary because it has pretty minimal engraved detail on the larger parts. There's not a lot of engraving. There's no rivet detail to speak of, and if you don't do something to bring up the detail, it just looks a little bit plain on the finished kit. The fit on this kit overall was great. To me, the biggest frustration with this kit is the lack of research that Tamiya put into the instructions and the color schemes and the marking options. And really, you can't build two of the marking options that are included in this kit with the plastic parts that are in this kit. To me, that's inexcusable and somewhat frustrating as a modeler. With that said, I'm glad I put a little bit of extra effort into the research on this kit, into the researching the details. I think this kit would make a good first twin-engine aircraft for somebody who's looking to break into that genre. The engineering on the kit is excellent, the parts fit is very good, and if you put forth a little bit of extra effort on this one, you'll be rewarded with a great looking kit. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you out there have built Tamiya's Beaufighter, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.